The cold void of space stretched endlessly, dotted with the dying flashes of battle. Wreckage drifted in the silence, the remains of shattered warships floating like ghosts of a war long lost. Below, the barren world of Vexus 9 turned slowly, its surface scarred by orbital bombardments. For the Avarian coalition, this was supposed to be their last stand. Their fleet, once mighty, was now reduced to a handful of damaged cruisers and corvettes. They had fought bravely, but they were outnumbered, outgunned, and running out of time. On the bridge of the Avarian flagship, Sky Talon, Commander Vierkala gripped the edges of her command console, her taloned fingers digging into the cold metal. Her feathers, once a proud display of deep blue and silver, were ruffled with exhaustion. The enemy fleet had surrounded them. There was no way out. "The Dominion is closing in," her tactical officer rasped, his beak clicking nervously. "They're preparing their final strike." On the main view screen, the Salrith Dominion fleet loomed like a dark storm. Their massive warships, sleek and angular, moved in perfect formation, surrounding the few surviving Avarian ships. The Dominion had spent years conquering world after world, crushing resistance wherever it rose. They had been winning this war for decades. And now, they were about to end it. A deep voice crackled through the Sky Talon's communication system, laced with cold arrogance. Commander Vierkala, the voice of Warlord Kethar, rumbled. "Your resistance has been amusing. But it ends now. Surrender, and your people may yet serve the Dominion." Vierkala bared her sharp teeth. "You offer slavery, not mercy." Kethar chuckled. "Call it what you will. Either way, you will kneel." The transmission ended, and silence fell over the Avarian bridge. Every officer knew what came next. The Dominion would wipe them out. No one expected mercy. No one expected a miracle. But then, a new alarm sounded. Something was emerging from hyperspace. The sensor officer squawked in confusion. "Unknown vessel detected. Bearing 227 Mark 5. Vierkala turned sharply. What? A single warship had just appeared on the battlefield. It was not Avarian. It was not Dominion. It was something else entirely. The Dominion fleet hesitated. Their perfect formation wavered slightly as they scanned the newcomer. The ship was massive, larger than any Dominion battlecruiser, its dark gray hull reflecting the distant starlight. It had a design unlike anything in the galaxy, sleek, powerful, and strangely angular, as if built for both elegance and brute force. Strange twin-barreled weapons lined its hull, and its engines burned with a cold blue light. Then, a transmission echoed across all channels. A deep, commanding voice spoke in perfect galactic common. "Attention, all combatants. This is the United Nations ship Valkyrie. Cease hostilities immediately." The Dominion fleet did not respond. The Avarians stared at their screens in stunned silence, and aboard the Sky Talon, Commander Vierkala whispered the question on everyone's mind. "Who are they?" No one had an answer. But history was about to change forever. Silence fell across the battlefield. The arrival of the UNS Valkyrie had frozen both fleets in place. The ship stood alone, a dark shape against the endless void, its engines glowing with a steady blue light. It was not Avarian. It was not Dominion. It was human. On the bridge of the Sky Talon, Commander Vierkala stared at the massive warship on her screen. It was unlike anything she had ever seen. Its sleek metal hull gleamed under distant starlight, and its surface bristled with unfamiliar weaponry. "What is a human ship doing here?" her tactical officer whispered. Vierkala had no answer. The humans were a minor species, known for diplomacy, trade, and exploration. They had no empire, no history of war with major powers. And yet, here was one of their warships, standing alone against the might of the Dominion. A new transmission cut through the silence. The deep, steady voice from before spoke again. "This is Admiral Elias Work of the UNS Valkyrie. Cease hostilities immediately, or face consequences. The Dominion warships did not move. Then, Warlord Kether's response came, filled with amusement. "Human vessel, you do not belong here. Leave now, or be destroyed." Aboard the Dominion flagship, the Black Fang, Warlord Kether leaned back in his command chair, his golden eyes gleaming with contempt. Humans were weak. Their presence here was nothing more than a foolish mistake. He raised a clawed hand and gave a simple command: destroy them. 5 Dominion cruisers broke formation, their weapons glowing with energy. They fired in perfect synchronization, unleashing a barrage of plasma bolts. The bright streams of energy raced toward the UNS Valkyrie, their heat capable of melting through any known warship's shields. But something unexpected happened. The plasma bolts struck the Valkyrie's hull and vanished. No explosion, no damage. The Dominion officers stared in confusion. Their most powerful weapons had simply disappeared on impact. Aboard the Black Fang, Kether's amusement turned to shock. "What trick is this?" he growled. Then, without warning, the Valkyrie returned fire. A loud thump echoed across its hull as kinetic railguns engaged. Unlike the energy-based weapons used by the Dominion and Avarians, humans had developed something different, something far more devastating. 3 hypervelocity rounds shot forward, moving at a fraction of the speed of light. The first Dominion cruiser shattered instantly, torn apart by the sheer impact. The second was hit in the center. Its armor crumpled like paper before exploding in a brilliant fireball. The third managed to activate emergency shields, but it didn't matter. The second round punched clean through, leaving a massive hole in its hull. Within seconds, it was nothing but debris. The remaining 2 cruisers fled in panic. On the Sky Talon, the Avarian crew watched in stunned silence. Commander Vierkala could hardly believe what she was seeing. The human ship had destroyed 3 Dominion cruisers in seconds, without using energy weapons. Her tactical officer's voice shook. "What kind of weapons are those?" Before she could answer, another transmission came from the Valkyrie. Admiral Elias Work spoke again, his voice calm, unwavering. That was a warning shot. Aboard the Black Fang, Kether clenched his claws into a fist. A warning shot. The Dominion had ruled the stars for decades, crushing every enemy in their path. Now, a single human ship had not only defied them, it had humiliated them. Rage burned in his chest. He would not let this stand. But before he could order another attack, something on his display made his blood run cold. The Valkyrie was moving. It wasn't advancing in a straight line like Dominion ships. It was moving fast, erratically, as if it had no weight at all. It twisted and turned with impossible precision, its engines flaring like a predator circling its prey. And then, it vanished. For a second, Kether thought it had jumped away. But no, the sensors picked up something. The Valkyrie had just moved so fast that it was already behind them. A sharp alarm blared. One of his officers turned, his voice filled with panic. "Sir, the human ship is." A sudden boom shook the entire bridge. The Black Fang's shields flickered violently as something massive struck them. The human warship had fired again, and this time, its weapons had hit directly. For the first time in his life, Warlord Kether felt fear. Humanity had arrived, and they were not weak. The battlefield was no longer silent. It was filled with panic. The Xalrith Dominion fleet, once an unstoppable force, was now in complete disarray. Their warships scrambled to regroup, their formation broken by an enemy they did not understand. And at the center of it all, standing alone against an entire fleet, was the UNS Valkyrie, a single Terran warship that had just rewritten the rules of war. On the bridge of the Sky Talon, Commander Vierkala and her crew watched in shock. That ship is a monster," one of her officers whispered. Vierkala couldn't argue. The Valkyrie had destroyed 3 Dominion cruisers in seconds. Their weapons were unlike anything seen before. They did not use energy beams or plasma cannons, no glowing weapons, no slow-moving torpedoes. Instead, their projectiles moved so fast that even Dominion shields were useless. And now, the Dominion flagship, the Black Fang, was under attack. Aboard the Black Fang, Warlord Cathar gritted his teeth. He had fought in countless battles, crushed many enemies, but never had he faced something like this. "This is impossible," one of his officers stammered. "No species has weapons that powerful." Cathar growled. "Then we will adapt. All ships, focus fire on the human vessel. Bring it down." The remaining Dominion warships moved quickly. They abandoned their attack on the Avarian fleet and turned their weapons on the Valkyrie. Bright blue plasma bolts, crimson ion lances, and deadly torpedoes filled the void, all aimed at the lone Terran warship. The Dominion had crushed many species with this overwhelming firepower. But this time, they were not fighting a weaker race. They were fighting humans. The Valkyrie moved like no other ship in the battle. Its engines burned bright as it twisted and turned with impossible speed. Unlike Dominion ships, which relied on predictable formations, the human vessel fought with chaos and precision at the same time. The first wave of Dominion attacks missed completely. The second wave of plasma bolts hit nothing but empty space as the Valkyrie dodged them with ease. And then, it struck back. A deep, thunderous thump echoed through the void as the Valkyrie's main railguns fired. The kinetic rounds tore through the battlefield like invisible spears. The first destroyed a Dominion battleship in one hit, splitting it in half. The second punched through a warcruiser, causing it to explode from within. The third shattered the engines of a dreadnought, leaving it drifting helplessly. The Dominion fleet, once mighty, was falling apart. On the Sky Talon, the Avarians could not believe their eyes. "They fight like predators," one officer whispered. Virakela nodded slowly. This was not how most species fought. The Xalrith Dominion relied on superior numbers and overwhelming firepower. The Avarians relied on formations and strategy. But the humans, they fought with something different. They fought with adaptability. They studied their enemy in real time. They exploited weaknesses instantly. And they fought as if every battle was their last. A new message came through the comms. It was Admiral Elias Rourke. "Avarian fleet, do you copy?" Virakala snapped out of her thoughts and responded quickly. "This is Commander Virakala of the Sky Talon. I am listening." There was a brief pause. Then Rourke spoke again. "We are engaging the Dominion fleet, but we are outnumbered. If you can still fight, we need your help." Virakala's feathers ruffled in surprise. This human had just crippled an entire Dominion armada, yet he was still asking for help. Her officers turned to her, waiting for a response. They all knew their fleet was weak. Most of their ships were barely functional, but this human had given them a chance. She clenched her jaw and made her decision. "Avarian fleet," she commanded. "All surviving ships, regroup. We fight alongside the humans." A chorus of determined voices filled the bridge. The Avarian warships, once retreating, turned and charged back into the fight. The Dominion fleet, caught between the Valkyrie's firepower and the Avarians' counterattack, started to fall apart. Aboard the Black Fang, Warlord Cathar roared in frustration. He could not believe what was happening. We are losing," one of his officers said in disbelief. Cathar's claws dug into his throne. He had to end this now. "Prepare the Oblivion Spear," he ordered. His officers stiffened. "Warlord, that weapon." "Silence." Cathar snapped. "I will not let some unknown humans defeat us. Fire the Oblivion Spear." A deep hum filled the Black Fang as the most powerful weapon of the Dominion fleet powered up. A planet-killer weapon meant to destroy entire worlds. Aboard the Valkyrie, Admiral Rourke saw the readings on his screen. His expression hardened. "They're about to do something big," he muttered. He turned to his crew. "Charge up the Gauss accelerator cannon," he ordered. "If they want to bring out their biggest weapon, then so will we." The battle was not over yet. The battlefield was filled with wreckage, drifting remains of shattered warships. Fires burned in the silence of space, flickering like dying stars. The once mighty Dominion fleet was now on the defensive, forced back by the unexpected power of the UNS Valkyrie and the returning Avarian forces. But the battle was not over. Aboard the Black Fang, Warlord Kethar stood tall, his golden eyes locked on the massive human warship. His pride burned with anger. How could one single Terran ship bring the Dominion to its knees? He clenched his claws. Enough. Fire the Oblivion Spear. His officers hesitated. The Oblivion Spear was a planet-destroying weapon designed to reduce entire civilizations to dust. Using it in battle was madness. But Kethar did not care. Fire, he roared. The massive energy cannon at the heart of the Black Fang activated. The ship's entire structure vibrated as energy gathered into the colossal weapon, glowing with a deadly blue light. The air on the bridge felt heavy, as if reality itself could feel what was coming. A beam of pure destruction fired from the Black Fang, cutting through space toward the Valkyrie. On the human warship, alarms blared. Massive energy spike detected. The sensor officer shouted, "They're using a super weapon." Admiral Elias Work narrowed his eyes. He had expected something like this. The Dominion always had one last trick. He turned to his weapons officer. "Is the Gauss accelerator cannon charged?" "Almost, sir." "Good. Fire on my command." The Oblivion Spear closed in, moving at terrifying speed. The Valkyrie's shields would not hold against it. It was too powerful. Rourke's jaw tightened. "Fire the Gauss cannon. Now." A deep thud shook the Valkyrie as the massive Gauss accelerator cannon activated. Unlike Dominion weapons, which relied on energy, the Gauss cannon was pure physics. It fired a projectile the size of a small battleship, moving at relativistic speeds, nearly the speed of light. A metal slug, accelerated beyond imagination, shot forward, straight toward the incoming Oblivion Spear. The two unstoppable forces collided. The impact created an explosion so massive that even distant stars flickered. A shockwave of energy and metal expanded outward, sending debris in all directions. The battlefield was blinded by the blast. For a moment, everything went silent. Then, as the light faded, the Valkyrie emerged, completely intact. The Gauss cannon had destroyed the Oblivion Spear before it could reach the ship. Aboard the Black Fang, Warlord Kethar took a step back in horror. "Impossible," he whispered. His ultimate weapon had been neutralized like it was nothing. The Valkyrie was not just powerful, it was unstoppable. Kethar gritted his teeth. He had one last option. Retreat. "All remaining ships," he growled, "fall back to Dominion space." The remaining Dominion warships turned and fled, their once unbreakable fleet now reduced to a scattered handful of survivors. Aboard the Sky Talon, Commander Vyre Kala watched in disbelief. "They're running," she whispered. The mighty Xalrith Dominion, feared across the galaxy, was retreating because of a single human warship. A transmission came through. Admiral Rourke appeared on the screen, calm and composed. "Commander Vyre Kala," he said, "the Dominion is retreating. Your people are safe." Vyre Kala straightened. "Not just because of us. You saved us, Admiral." Rourke nodded. "We fight for more than just survival. We fight for freedom." She studied him for a moment, then gave a small bow of respect. "The Avarian Coalition will not forget this," she said. Rourke gave a small smile. "Neither will history." As the Dominion fleet vanished into hyperspace, the battlefield was left in silence. The war was not over. But today, something had changed forever. Humanity had entered the galactic stage, and the galaxy would never be the same again. The battlefield was eerily silent. Where once there had been dozens of Dominion warships, now only wreckage and drifting debris remained. Fires burned on broken hulls, their light flickering in the cold void of space. The Great Salrith Dominion, a force that had crushed countless civilizations, had just suffered a defeat unlike any in its history. And at the center of it all, standing unchallenged, was the UNS Valkyrie. On the bridge of the Sky Talon, Commander Vyerkala stared at the holo-display, still struggling to believe what she had witnessed. The Dominion had been unstoppable for decades. Their fleets had never lost to a smaller force. Yet today, a single human warship had changed everything. Her second-in-command, Tarak, let out a slow breath. They won. The humans, they actually won. Vyerkala turned to face the holographic transmission from the Valkyrie's bridge. Admiral Elias Work stood tall, his expression calm but unreadable. "Commander Vyerkala," he said, "your fleet fought well. The Dominion will think twice before attacking again." Vyerkala hesitated. "This is more than just a battle, Admiral. This was a warning to the entire galaxy. You just made enemies of the most dangerous empire in known space." Work nodded. "Maybe, but now, they know humanity is not weak." She studied him carefully. Humans were a young species in galactic politics. They had no vast empire, no colonies stretching across the stars. And yet their technology, tactics, and sheer willpower had just humbled one of the greatest war machines in history. "How?" she finally asked. "How did you do this? How did one ship defeat an entire Dominion battle group?" Rourke's lips curled into a small smile. "We fight differently, Commander." That was an understatement. Most species relied on tradition and strategy, time-tested formations, predictable battle doctrines. The Dominion relied on brute strength and overwhelming firepower. But humans, they fought with adaptability. They fought as if every battle was their last. They fought like survivors. And that made them dangerous. Aboard the Black Fang, a defeated warlord. Deep in the Salrith Dominion's retreating fleet, Warlord Kethar sat on his throne, his claws gripping the armrests so tightly that the metal bent beneath his fingers. His fleet had been destroyed. His enemies had escaped. And worst of all, he had been defeated by a species the Dominion had never even considered a threat. Kethar's officers stood in silence, afraid to speak. The bridge of the Black Fang was dark, the screens flickering from the damage stained in the battle. Finally, one of his subordinates dared to break the silence. "Warlord, what are your orders?" Kethar slowly turned his golden eyes toward the officer. The fire of rage burned behind them. "The humans are dangerous," he growled. "We underestimated them once. We will not make that mistake again." He stood, his massive form towering over his crew. "Send a message to High Command," he ordered. "Tell them what happened here. Tell them that humanity must be destroyed." The officer hesitated. "But Warlord, their technology is advanced. If one ship could do this, what if they have more?" Kethar bared his fangs. "Then we will crush them before they can become a true threat." He turned his gaze toward the empty void, where the Valkyrie had stood victorious. "Enjoy your victory, humans," he muttered darkly. "Because the next time we meet, I will not underestimate you." Aboard the UNS Valkyrie, the next step. Back on the Valkyrie, Admiral Rourke stood before his command crew, his expression unreadable. The battle was over, but he knew this was only the beginning. The Dominion would not forget this defeat. "Status report," he ordered. The tactical officer straightened. "Minor damage to outer hull, but all primary systems are operational. The Dominion fleet has fully retreated." Rourke nodded. "Good." He turned to his communication officer. "Send a message back to Earth and the Terran Defense Fleet. Let them know what happened here." The officer hesitated. "Sir, do you think the Dominion will return?" Rourke's jaw tightened. Without a doubt. He looked at the massive holo display, showing the remnants of the battle. "They thought we were weak," he said quietly. "They thought we were just another species to conquer." He turned back to his crew. "But now, They fear us." The bridge fell silent as the weight of his words settled over them. The Valkyrie had won the battle, but war was coming. The Xalrith Dominion would return, and next time, they would bring everything they had. Humanity had entered the galactic stage, and there was no turning back. Admiral Rourke exhaled slowly, his eyes focused on the stars ahead. "Prepare the Valkyrie for our next mission," he said. "War is coming, and we need to be ready." The stars were calm. The battlefield had gone silent. But deep in the darkness of space, a new threat was rising. The Xalrith Dominion had been defeated, for the first time in centuries. The name human was now being spoken in hushed whispers across the galaxy. Fear, confusion, and curiosity spread like wildfire among alien species. But for the Dominion, defeat was unacceptable. Xalrith Dominion War Council, the call for revenge. In the heart of the Xalrith homeworld, a grand hall stood, carved from black stone. Inside, the Dominion War Council gathered. High-ranking warlords, fleet commanders, and strategists sat in a massive chamber, surrounding a holographic projection of the battlefield where the UNS Valkyrie had claimed victory. At the center of the room, Warlord Kethar stood tall. His golden eyes burned with fury. He had once been a commander of unstoppable fleets, but today he stood as the leader of a humiliated empire. He slammed his fist against the table. The metal cracked beneath his strength. "This was a disaster," he growled. "A single human warship destroyed our fleet. This cannot be ignored." The other warlords muttered among themselves. Some nodded in agreement, while others exchanged uncertain glances. The Dominion had never faced an enemy like this before. One of the elder warlords, Valrax, leaned forward. "And what do you propose, Kethar?" "Another attack. More warships sent to be slaughtered." Kethar's claws tightened. "No, this time, we do not just send a fleet." His voice was dark, filled with vengeance. "We send everything." The room fell silent. Another warlord, Jormek, narrowed his reptilian eyes. "You mean total war?" "Yes." Kethar's voice was cold. "The humans think they are strong, but they are young, small. We will burn their worlds. We will crush their fleets, and we will erase their name from history." The War Council remained quiet for a moment. Then, one by one, the warlords nodded. The decision was made. The full power of the Dominion was about to be unleashed. Aboard the UNS Valkyrie, preparing for war. Far away, aboard the UNS Valkyrie, Admiral Elias Rourke stood in the command center, surrounded by his officers. The crew had barely rested since the battle, but there was no time to celebrate. They all knew one thing: the Dominion would return. The holographic display showed reports from across the sector. The battle had been recorded by dozens of ships, and the news had spread fast. The entire Terran Defense Fleet was now on high alert. Lieutenant Sarah Holt, the Valkyrie's intelligence officer, turned to Rourke. "Sir, we've intercepted Dominion transmissions. They are regrouping. But this isn't just a counterattack." Rourke raised an eyebrow. "What do you mean?" Holt took a deep breath. "We believe they're preparing for a full-scale war. Not just against us, but against all of humanity." The room went quiet. Commander James Carter, the ship's tactical officer, shook his head. "They're treating us like a major power now. That's both good and bad." Rourke exhaled. "They're afraid. And when empires like the Dominion feel fear, they lash out." The weight of the situation settled over the crew. They had fought one battle, but now an entire war was coming. The door to the bridge slid open, and a new figure entered. It was Commander Voyrkala, the Avarian officer whose fleet had nearly been destroyed in the battle. She had chosen to stay aboard the Valkyrie as a diplomatic representative. "I have spoken with my people," she said, her feathered head held high. "The Avarian coalition will not sit by while the Dominion wages war against a new species. You have earned our respect, Admiral. We will fight beside you." A ripple of relief passed through the crew. The Avarians were powerful warriors, and having their support meant that humanity would not stand alone. Work nodded. "We appreciate the alliance, Commander. We're going to need all the help we can get." The holographic display shifted, showing a map of known Dominion space. The numbers were terrifying. The Dominion had thousands of warships, powerful weapons, and experience in planetary warfare. The Terran Defense Fleet had strength, but they had never fought an enemy like this. Work folded his arms. "We need a strategy." Carter stepped forward. "Sir, if they're bringing their full fleet, we can't just defend Earth. We need to take the fight to them." Holt nodded. "Agreed. If we wait for them to strike first, we might not survive it." Work thought for a moment. Then his decision was made. "Prepare the fleet," he ordered. "We're going on the offensive." His officers straightened. There was no hesitation in his voice, only determination. Viewership watched him with quiet admiration. Humans were new to the stars, but they did not run from a fight. The war was coming, but this time, humanity would strike first. To be continued. Summary of Part 6. The Xalrith Dominion declares total war against humanity. The UNS Valkyrie intercepts Dominion plans and prepares for the worst. The Avarian coalition joins forces with humanity. Admiral Rourke decides to go on the offensive. The stars shimmered in the vast darkness of space, but tonight, they were not alone. A massive human fleet, dozens of warships, cruisers, and battleships, moved through the void like a silent storm. At the front of this armada, leading the charge, was the UNS Valkyrie. Its dark hull reflected the distant light of dying stars, its massive guns ready for war. Ahead of them, a monstrous force awaited. The Xalrith Dominion's Grand Armada had arrived. Thousands of Dominion warships, their jagged black forms blotting out the stars, prepared to wipe humanity from existence. Their battle formations stretched for light years, a terrifying wall of death. At their center, commanding them all, was Warlord Kether's flagship, the Black Fang. This was it, the final battle. Aboard the UNS Valkyrie, the calm before the storm, on the Valkyrie's bridge, Admiral Elias Work stood tall, his expression unreadable. Around him, his officers worked in silent determination. Lieutenant Sarah Holt monitored enemy movements. "Dominion fleet is fully deployed. They're waiting for us to make the first move." Commander James Carter checked the weapons system. "All ships in the Terran fleet are ready for battle." "Admiral, just give the word." Standing beside them was Commander Viewership, the Avarian representative. Her people had sent their own fleet to fight alongside humanity. It was the first time their species had ever stood together in war. She turned to Rourke. "The Dominion believes this battle is already won. They think they are superior." Rourke smirked. "Let's show them how wrong they are." He turned to his communication officer. "Send the order." The officer nodded and relayed the command. Across the human and Avarian fleets, warships powered up their shields, weapons locked onto targets, and engines burned bright as they surged forward into battle. The war had begun. The battle ignites. The silence of space shattered. Massive energy beams and plasma cannons fired across the battlefield. Warships exploded in bursts of flame and metal, their shattered hulls drifting lifelessly. The Terran and Avarian fleet fought with precision. Human warships weaved through the chaos, using advanced eye-targeting systems and unpredictable maneuvers. The Avarians, skilled in aerial combat, launched their fighter squadrons, harassing the Dominion's larger warships. But the Dominion was ruthless. Their sheer numbers threatened to overwhelm the Allied forces. For every Dominion ship destroyed, 2 more took its place. On the Valkyrie, alarms blared as enemy warships focused their fire. The shields flickered under the assault. Holt shouted, "Shields at 60%. We're taking heavy fire." Carter clenched his fists. "We can't hold out forever." Work's mind raced. The Dominion fleet was too massive to defeat in a direct engagement. They needed a decisive blow, something to turn the tide. His eyes locked onto the Black Fang, Kethar's flagship. "Target the Black Fang," he ordered. "If we take out Kethar, their fleet will lose command." Carter's eyes widened. "That ship is heavily shielded. Our weapons won't break through easily." Work smirked. "Then we use something that will." The final gambit, the Gauss accelerator cannon. Deep within the Valkyrie's weapons bay, a final trump card was prepared. The Gauss accelerator cannon, the same weapon that had destroyed the Dominion superweapon, was being charged for one last shot. The crew worked quickly. The energy levels spiked, the ship's entire frame trembling from the power buildup. Holt shouted, "Cannon is ready to fire." On the Black Fang, Warlord Kethar watched the battle unfold. His forces were overwhelming the enemy. Victory was close. Then he saw it. The Valkyrie, now facing his flagship, its main cannon glowing like a newborn star. His eyes widened. "Fire," Work commanded. A deep thud shook the Valkyrie as the Gauss accelerator cannon released its payload. A hyper-accelerated projectile, the size of a battleship, shot forward at nearly the speed of light. The Black Fang's shields flared, but it wasn't enough. The slug punched through the Dominion flagship's defenses, tearing through the hull in an instant. The ship ruptured from the inside, explosions tearing across its entire structure. Warlord Kethar barely had time to scream before his ship was consumed in a fiery explosion. The Dominion fleet saw their commander fall, and in that moment they hesitated. The tide of battle shifted. The Allied fleet, seeing their opportunity, pushed forward. Dominion warships, now leaderless, began to break formation. Some tried to flee, others fought desperately, but their spirit was gone. Within minutes, what had seemed like an unstoppable force was now falling apart. Victory and the dawn of a new era. The battle was over. The Dominion fleet was shattered. The survivors fled back to their home systems, their era of galactic dominance finally broken. On the Valkyrie's bridge, the crew cheered. Officers embraced. Pilots laughed over the comms, and exhausted soldiers slumped into their chairs. Humanity had won. Vyerkala turned to Rourke, her expression filled with something between admiration and disbelief. "You actually did it." Rourke exhaled. "We all did." She nodded. "The galaxy will never forget this day." Rourke stared out at the wreckage of the battle. This was just the beginning. Humanity was no longer just a small species on the edge of the galaxy. They were now a force to be reckoned with, and the stars belonged to them too. The end.